An aircraft carrier is often seen as the ultimate symbol of naval power. Its massive size, long flight deck, and squadrons of fighter jets create an image of dominance that few weapons can match. When such a ship appears near a coastline, it sends a political and military message without firing a single shot. However, behind this intimidating appearance lies a fundamental weakness that has existed since the first carriers were launched. No matter how modern or advanced an aircraft carrier is, it remains one of the most vulnerable assets in naval warfare. The core problem is that an aircraft carrier cannot fight alone. Unlike a submarine or a smaller warship, a carrier's strength does not come from armor or raw firepower. Its real weapon is its aircraft, and those aircraft can only operate if the carrier is protected. To survive, a carrier requires an entire defensive bubble around it. This includes destroyers and cruisers for air defense, submarines for underwater protection, aircraft for early warning, and satellites for long-range detection. If even one layer of this system fails, the carrier's vulnerability increases dramatically. Size, which gives a carrier its presence, also makes it easy to detect. A ship stretching hundreds of meters across the ocean cannot hide easily. Modern sensors, satellites, and long-range surveillance systems can track its movement long before it enters a combat zone. Even older detection methods, such as radar reflections and radio signal analysis, can reveal its approximate position. Once detected, the carrier becomes a priority target because of the enormous strategic value it represents. Destroying or disabling a single carrier can shift the balance of power in an entire region. Another critical weakness is reaction time. Aircraft carriers are complex machines that require coordination between hundreds or thousands of crew members. Launching fighters, redirecting patrols, and adjusting defensive systems all take time. In a sudden, fast-moving attack, this complexity can work against the carrier. A smaller, simpler warship can react more quickly, while the carrier must manage multiple systems at once. This delay, even if it lasts only seconds or minutes, can be enough for an enemy strike to succeed. Carriers are also highly dependent on predictable operating patterns. Flight operations follow cycles, and during these cycles the carrier is especially exposed. When aircraft are landing or taking off, the deck is crowded with fuel, weapons, and personnel. Any successful hit during this moment can cause fires, explosions, and chaos. History has shown that carriers do not need to sink to be defeated. Damage to the flight deck alone can stop air operations entirely, turning the carrier into a powerless platform unable to project force. Modern technology has not eliminated these problems. In some ways, it has increased them. Advanced defense systems rely on software, sensors, and data networks that must function perfectly under stress. If electronic warfare, jamming, or deception disrupts these systems, the carrier's defensive bubble can collapse rapidly. What looks like strength on paper becomes fragility in real combat conditions. Ultimately, an aircraft carrier is a weapon designed to dominate when it controls the environment. It excels when it can operate freely, supported by intelligence, coordination, and secure communications. But in a contested, hostile environment, its size, dependence on escorts, and operational complexity turn into weaknesses. This is why even an older, well-handled warship, built with a focus on survival and disruption, can threaten a modern carrier. Power at sea is not just about what a ship carries on its deck, but about how well it can survive when everything starts to go wrong. During the Cold War, the U.S. Navy lived with the constant expectation that any conflict could instantly escalate into a large-scale, technology-shattering war. American warships of the 1970s were designed, trained, and operated under the assumption that satellites might be destroyed, communications jammed, and command structures disrupted within minutes. This mindset shaped a naval doctrine that emphasized survival, independence, and aggressive decision-making under uncertainty. Rather than relying on perfect information, crews were trained to fight effectively even when they were partially blind. Training during this era was relentless and unforgiving. Sailors were conditioned to operate with minimal guidance, often under radio silence, where even a single transmission could reveal a ship's position. Officers learned to make critical decisions without waiting for approval from higher command. This decentralized approach meant that when combat began, each ship could act as a thinking, adaptive weapon rather than a passive platform waiting for instructions. In contrast to modern centralized command systems, this doctrine encouraged initiative and speed, qualities that are decisive in naval warfare. American crews were also trained to expect deception. Radar contacts could be false, signals could be traps, and silence could be more dangerous than noise. As a result, they developed a deep understanding of passive detection. Instead of constantly emitting radar signals, which reveal a ship's location, they relied on listening, analyzing electronic emissions, radar reflections from other sources, and even subtle environmental clues. This ability to detect without being detected gave U.S. warships a critical edge, allowing them to choose when and how to engage. Ship design reflected this philosophy as well. Systems were built with redundancy and manual backups. If advanced electronics failed, crews could still operate weapons, navigate, and fight using older methods. Mechanical reliability was valued as much as technological sophistication. This meant that damage or electronic interference did not automatically remove a ship from the fight. The ship and its crew were expected to absorb punishment and continue operating under extreme conditions. This doctrine was not about elegance or efficiency, it was about endurance. The U.S. Navy expected to face an enemy that was equally powerful and equally determined. As a result, exercises were designed to be chaotic and stressful, simulating worst-case scenarios. Crews practiced fighting while tired, confused, and under pressure, because that was how real war would feel. By the time a real engagement occurred, these conditions were familiar rather than overwhelming. When compared to a modern aircraft carrier force that relies heavily on real-time data, centralized control, and constant connectivity, this older doctrine reveals its lasting value. A carrier group functions best when every sensor, network, and command link is operating smoothly. If those systems are disrupted, decision-making slows, and uncertainty spreads. The Cold War-era U.S. approach, by contrast, assumed disruption as the norm rather than the exception. The strength of this doctrine lies in its realism. It accepts that war is messy, information is incomplete, and mistakes are inevitable. By training sailors to operate in that reality, the U.S. Navy of the 1970s created crews capable of exploiting enemy hesitation and confusion. In a confrontation where modern systems are degraded or denied, this mindset can become a decisive advantage. It is a reminder that doctrine is not defined by technology alone, but by how people are trained to think and fight when technology fails. Modern naval warfare is built on information. Sensors, satellites, data links, and command networks connect ships, aircraft, and headquarters into a single, constantly updated picture of the battlefield. For a modern aircraft carrier, this digital web is not just helpful, it is essential. Every decision, from launching aircraft to engaging incoming threats, depends on accurate, real-time data flowing without interruption. When that flow is disturbed, even the most advanced warship can quickly lose its edge. Over-reliance on networks creates a dangerous illusion of control. As long as screens are filled with clean tracks and confident symbols, commanders feel secure. But those displays are only as reliable as the systems feeding them. Electronic warfare can distort or delay information, turning clarity into confusion. Signals can be jammed, spoofed, or subtly manipulated so that false targets appear real and real threats disappear. In such an environment, the carrier group may still be powerful, but it is no longer fully aware, and awareness is everything at sea. Centralized command structures increase this vulnerability. Modern forces often depend on higher-level coordination to manage complex operations. Orders, targeting data, and threat assessments flow from centralized nodes. If those nodes are disrupted or destroyed, decision-making slows dramatically. Ships and aircraft hesitate, waiting for confirmation or updated instructions. Even a short delay can be fatal when missiles travel at supersonic speeds and engagement windows last only seconds. The problem is not just technical, but psychological. Crews trained in highly networked environments can become accustomed to certainty. When systems fail, uncertainty feels abnormal and paralyzing. Operators may second-guess their own observations if they do not match what the network shows. This hesitation can prevent timely action. In contrast, forces trained to expect imperfect information are more likely to trust their instincts and act decisively. Network dependence also creates predictability. Data-driven operations follow established patterns, surveillance cycles, communication bursts, and coordination routines. An experienced adversary can study these patterns and time disruptions for maximum effect. A brief but well-timed electronic attack during a critical moment, such as aircraft recovery or defensive repositioning, can create cascading failures across the entire carrier group. Another weakness lies in complexity. Modern systems are incredibly capable, but they are also layered and interdependent. A single failure can ripple outward, affecting multiple functions at once. A disrupted data link may not only affect targeting, but also air traffic control, identification systems, and threat warnings. Crews suddenly face multiple problems at the same time, increasing cognitive load and stress. In combat, this overload can lead to mistakes. Ironically, technological superiority can magnify these risks. When a force expects its systems to work flawlessly, it may invest less in alternative methods. Manual procedures, simplified tactics, and independent action can receive less emphasis in training. Over time, this creates a gap between what the force can do in ideal conditions and what it can do when conditions deteriorate. In a confrontation with an opponent that understands these vulnerabilities, network dependence becomes a strategic liability. The goal is not to destroy the carrier outright, but to degrade its awareness and coordination just enough to level the playing field. Once the digital advantage is reduced, the fight becomes about reaction time, discipline, and adaptability. This reality highlights a timeless truth of warfare: technology amplifies human capability, but it cannot replace it. When networks fail, the outcome depends on how well crews can operate without them. An aircraft carrier that loses its informational advantage may still be afloat, but without clear eyes and confident decisions, its power is sharply diminished.